Everyone thought he was a lonely loser with no future, but he turns out to be a half-demon who is key to defeating the bloodthirsty vampires who have taken over the world. The story begins with Yu, who was a pathetic nobody whose own parents hated him ever since he was born. His mother believed he was a cursed demon and made him live every moment in fear until his parents finally tried to kill him. After the incident, he was taken to an orphanage where he was determined to live like a loner. But with the help of another orphan, Mika, he slowly learned the real value of family and made true bonds with his friends at the orphanage. Sadly, his happiness and peace did not last long. One tragic day, a deadly virus suddenly spread around the world and eliminated everyone older than the age of 13. Yu and his gang tried to escape from the madness together, but soon got surrounded by creep vampires who captured them and carted them off to an underground city, where all the surviving kids were forced to sacrifice their blood every day to the vampires. 4 years passed like this, causing Yu to grow up into an emo kid with anger issues who is kept under control by his best friend Mika, who has accepted their situation and advises Yu to cooperate with the vampires to stay alive. One day, they see a vampire walk over a child's hand as if it's nothing, which infuriates Yu so much that he tries to throw hands with the grown vampire. Mika begs the vampire to forgive Yu's dumbness, but the vampire ignores him and picks Yu up to throw him off a ledge. He only escapes from being unalived when a noble vampire comes by, after which the vampire wordlessly drops Yu and leaves. Relieved, Mika greets him as Lord Farid and explains the whole situation to him. Lord Farid laughs it off and asks Mika if he will come by his mansion later that day because the FBI are too dead to stop him now. After Mika agrees, the Lord asks if Yu will join them as well, but before Yu can cuss him out, Mika explains that he's too shy to come. While walking back, Yu confidently says that he could have kicked that vampire's butt and gets mad at Mika for apologizing earlier. He then asks how Mika and Lord Farid know each other, to which Mika replies that the noble is basically his super daddy who drinks his blood regularly and gives him treats in return. Yu gets mad at him for selling out to a vampire and storms off. Later that night, when he returns to the little shed where the orphanage kids now live, he is surprised to hear they are making curry for dinner. They explain that Mika somehow brought all the ingredients home, allowing them to have a feast for the first time since they were brought to this underground place. Everybody at the table devours the delicious meal except for Yu, who simply stares at the food silently. Once everybody has fallen asleep, Mika finally shows up at the shelter. Yu confronts him and offers to give his own blood next time, but Mika protests and points out that his main focus should remain to defeat the vampires. Yu sadly admits that he can never realistically defeat the much more powerful vampires, but Mika shuts him up and says that all the other kids depend on his hope to keep going. They sit together to eat the curry when Mika gives Yu a revolver to use against the vampires and displays a map of the underground city that he stole from Farid's mansion. He reveals that he always planned to use his connection with the noble vampire to find a way out of here and urges Yu to run away with him. Yu is too stunned to speak for a while, but finally asks what the point of escaping is if they'll simply die after getting infected by the virus. Mika admits that he doesn't have an answer to that, but believes they can find a way to make things work within a year before they turn 13. This is somehow enough to convince Yu, and they wake everyone up to try and flee in the dead of night. The group quietly slithers its way through the bowels of the city to get to the location that is clearly marked as the exit on the map, but it ends up being a trap laid by Lord Farid. He welcomes them with a smirk, saying that he loves playing games with humans. Before anyone can react, he zips toward one of the girls at super speed and bites her, which kills her instantly. Yu shoots the gun at him and misses, but Farid is impressed that Mika was able to steal the gun and map from him, so he reveals that the exit on the map actually exists, and if they manage to get past him, they will be able to escape. Yu scares everyone into making a run for it by shooting his gun at the sky, but Farid effortlessly eliminates them all until only Mika and Yu remain. Mika looks at Yu one final time and reminds him that they'll always be family before grabbing the gun and running at Farid. Before he can shoot, Farid impales him with his bare hands and cuts off the arm holding the gun. To Farid's surprise, Yu appears behind him, picks up the gun, and shoots him point blank. He then desperately tries to drag Mika with him to the exit, but Mika pushes him away and yells at him to run away. Finally, Yu lets go and flees until he finds himself in a snowy forest, where he is approached by 3 cloaked people who call him the boy who is prophesied to be the key to defeating the vampires. Hearing this, Yu hugs them and cries out that he will do anything to defeat the vampires. After he calms down a little, he asks who on earth they are because all humans are supposed to have died. The man laughs and explains that the vampires lied to him, and that in reality, although the virus wiped out most of humanity, 1/10 of the population managed to survive and is trying to revive itself in this new world that is also being invaded by demons. He then introduces himself as Guran, a lieutenant colonel from the Imperial Demon Army. an organization whose mission is to gain as much control of the new human civilization as possible. He invites you to join the army and get the power he needs to defeat the vampires he so hates. Without a second thought, Yu agrees and becomes a member. 4 years later, he has learned to become a skilled swordsman and hopes to be a part of the vampire extermination unit. He is still as much of a hothead as before, and one day he ignores the orders of his superiors and single-handedly faces a horseman of the apocalypse demon. He expertly jumps onto one of its arms, runs towards its face while slicing through its arm along the way, and finally lands a killing blow on its chest. To his disappointment, he gets suspended for his defiance instead of praise and is sent to a school full of normies. He makes a scene by begging the teacher to suspend him in front of the entire class, but gets interrupted by the girl sitting behind him, who silently shows him a note that reveals that she is an army surveillance officer named Shino, who will snitch on him if he is uncooperative. This shuts him up immediately, but she rubs more salt in his wounds by saying that his suspension will not end until he makes at least one friend. You can't believe what he's hearing, so she presses on by recounting all the gossip Lieutenant Colonel Guran told her about his past. Like a therapist, she guesses that he's unable to get close to anyone and make friends because his parents died right in front of his eyes. He tries to get rid of her, but she follows him wherever he goes. While standing by the lockers, they witness a group of bullies picking on a nerd to make him give them lunch. Initially, Yu decides to ignore them, but once they go too far, he confronts them and warns them to stop. The leader gets excited to face a new op, but just before they're about to throw hands, Shino alerts Yu that his suspension will be extended if he hurts a civilian. He ends up getting punched in the face and somehow finds himself helping the nerd carry food to his bullies. The nerd named Yoichi explains that the bullying situation happened after he asked Yama, the guy who punched Yu, to be added into his inner circle of friends. He was hoping that if he became a part of the circle, he could ask Yama to put in a good word for him so that he can join the army despite failing the entrance exam. Yu wonders what value Yama's word would have, to which Yoichi reveals that Yama is actually a candidate whose seat has been reserved in the Vampire Extermination Unit, also known as the Moon Demon Company. Yu's blood boils with jealousy and he starts hating Yama even more. Yoichi elaborates that he is indeed self-aware and knows that wimpy losers like him usually don't join the army, but he wants to avenge his sister who sacrificed herself to protect him from a vampire. Hearing this, Yu tells him his sister would not have wanted him to risk his life and that he should stick to being a low-life insult. Just like that, he ditches Yoichi, but suddenly, an explosion goes off behind them, and an alert signaling that a vampire is loose in the school blares all around them. Shino orders the two boys to evacuate so that she can call the Moon Demon Company, but Yu stubbornly says that he will defeat the vampire himself and runs off. He rushes past the crowd of panicking students and into the empty hallways when he hears a scream from a classroom. There he finds a vampire drinking the blood of a female student while Yama wets his pants while hiding in a corner. Yu charges with his sword, but she jumps out of the way and lunges toward him. He narrowly dodges her swing, but she immediately follows it with a kick that throws him against the wall, after which she tries to punch him again. He barely breaks away and swings his sword a couple more times until he finally makes contact and cuts off her arm. She quickly grabs it and silently watches him for some time. Yu hears the female student let out a trembling breath, so he frantically tells Yama to take the girl and run. Instead, the pathetic coward cries out that he lied about being a soldier so that everyone would fear him. The vampire then regenerates her arm and grabs a rod. She starts blindly swinging at him, but he dodges them all and slashes her multiple times. She keeps healing shallow wounds and goes back to drink some more blood from the girl, but Yoichi suddenly bursts into the class and tackles her to the ground. Before the vampire can attack him, Yu blocks her hand, which pisses her off, and she pushes them both out of the window. As they fall, he sinks his sword into her body, but she laughs and says that this is nothing more than a scratch for her, and that she will enjoy drinking his blood before the Moon Demon Company arrives. At that moment, another sword pierces her, but this time she realizes with horror that it's a cursed weapon. Lieutenant Colonel Guran coldly bids her farewell as she crumbles into dust instantly. After the vampire is gone, Guran teases Yu for thinking he could defeat a vampire with an ordinary weapon, but Yu insists that he was totally very close to killing her, and that he should become a member of the Moon Demon Company already. Guran rejects him because he doesn't like people who can't work in a team, and says that he can't be a member until he makes a friend. Right then, Yoichi comes running toward Yu with relief that he's alive and hugs him so violently that it knocks him out cold. In his mind, he returns to the place where he lost his orphanage family, and all his friends are smiling at him as Mika says he's glad Yu finally made a friend. He asks Yu to take good care of him and says goodbye because their job is done. Before Yu can understand, all of them turn the other way and leave without turning back despite Yu begging them not to. The next time he wakes up, he finds himself lying on a hospital bed with Yoichi and Shino sitting next to him. Shino delivers the good news that both Yu and Yoichi are officially members of the Moon Demon Company. She then says that she looks forward to working with them as comrades and asks them for a handshake. While Yoichi immediately extends his hand, Yu hesitates at first, but begrudgingly joins his hands with theirs as well. The next day, the girl he saved from the vampire shyly gives him a love letter that thanks him for saving her life and runs away before he can say anything. Shino teases him after seeing this, which pisses Yu off, and he demands to know why he still has to attend school if he's part of the vampire extermination unit. Shino shrugs and advises him to take up with Guran, but he's never around. Finally, she assures him that his training for the Moon Demon Company has already begun, and that if he does well, he will someday get what he truly desires. She then takes out a key, which transforms into the flame-covered demon that she has a contract with. The demon turns into a giant scythe, making you realize the true nature of the cursed weapons called infernal arms that can kill vampires. Yu decides the quickest way to get an infernal arm is to snatch it away from Shino, despite her pointing out that these weapons can't be used by others when imbued with the demon of a specific person. Still, Yu picks a fight with her and can surprisingly hold his own against her cursed scythe. In the end, she unleashes her demon from the scythe, which pushes past him and leaves him breathless. Yu marvels at the power of the infernal arms and speculates how easy it will be to defeat vampires once he has one, but she humbles him by saying that the vampires are usually armed with their own stacked weapons, which is why Guran emphasizes the importance of teamwork so much. At that moment, Yoichi comes running and hides behind Yu, who looks back to see that the bullies from the previous day were chasing him. They beg Yoichi to stop and explain that they have not come to bully him, but rather want to be his minions after seeing how cool he was against the vampire. Yoichi doesn't like suffering from success, so he pleads with them to leave him alone. Yu shames them for stooping so low that they want to be henchmen for the person they were bullying a day before, but Yama argues that they're desperate because they want Yoichi or Yu's help to use their connection with the army to find out what happened to their friend Yuji, who entered the Forbidden Chamber and never came back. Yu doesn't know what chamber they're talking about, but Shino butts in and scolds them for entering the restricted area like dumbasses. She coldly informs them that their friend was probably caught by the army and will mostly be given the death penalty for breaking into the area, after which she walks away. Later on, the trio meets up and Yu asks about the Forbidden Chamber. Shino explains that it's rumored to be one of the 7 mysteries of the school, but in reality is the training venue for the Moon Demon Company. It is strictly out of bounds because if an inexperienced person enters it, they may be possessed by a demon. She then decides that Yu is ready for the next stage of his training and takes them through shady hallways and stairs that lead deep underground where she claims a demon resides. She elaborates that the entire school is actually a training space for the Moon Demon Company, and that people who are able to withstand the evil energy from the demon are eventually recruited into the vampire extermination unit. They finally reach a door that is plastered with protective talismans beyond which only those who are called by the extermination unit are allowed to pass. Determined to get his own infernal arm, Yu opens the door to win over the demon. The first thing he sees is a deranged Yuji holding a giant axe. Shino tells him to maintain distance and to simply observe as the extermination unit arrives to rescue Yuji. Obviously, Yu ignores her and charges at Yuji with his sword in order to get the A's. Yuji turns around and blocks the sword. Before Yu can attack again, Shino barricades him with her scythe and insists that he cannot defeat a demon yet, and that if he touches the infernal arm with his bare hands, he will be possessed by the demon just like Yuji. As usual, Yu does the exact opposite and throws away his sword to fight with Yuji with his own fists. The possessed Yuji swings the axe twice, but Yu slides beneath it, grabs the axe, and hits Yuji's head with his knee. He feels super cool for getting his hands on the infernal arm and turns around to celebrate with Shino, but instead finds himself in the old shed, with his orphanage family looking at him all confused and asking him why he looks so lost. They ask him to join them at the table because dinner's getting cold, and Yu gets gaslit into thinking that this is normal. As he's about to have his first bite, Mika asks him how his revolution against the vampires is going and when he'll create a safe haven for them as he promised. Yu doesn't know what to say and asks them if they were alive this entire time, to which they casually reply that they're all dead. They remind him of the time the vampire killed them all and Yu abandoned them by running away. Yu desperately denies this, but Mika doubles down and mocks him for not avenging them yet. He hugs Yu from behind and whispers that he needs to get stronger if he wants to avenge them, and that Mika can give his power if Yu accepts him in his heart. Yu enters into a daze and agrees to this, but as darkness slowly envelopes him, he snaps back into his senses and grabs Mika. He demands to know who this being really is because Mika would never support his desire for revenge. The fake Mika keeps yelling out that he is real while the world around Yu slowly disintegrates and Mika turns into a demon. In the next second, Yu regains consciousness, much to Shino's shock. who explains that he managed to break out of the demon's hallucinations by exorcising it with sheer willpower alone and without using a contract spell. Yu looks at the axe with hope and asks if that means the infernal arm is his, but she answers that Guran will be the one who decides what weapon he gets and will oversee the rituals involved in forming a contract with the demon in the infernal arm. She guesses that he'll start coming to this chamber from tomorrow onward to train with the rest of the extermination unit. Hearing this, Yu feels thrilled to finally get a little bit closer to his goal. The next day, Yu arrives late to the training venue because he gets punched by a random guy at school for accidentally bumping into him. Once he arrives, Shino escorts him and Yoichi to a classroom being taught by Guran, who is simply sitting on a chair with his eyes closed. After seeing them, he finally breaks his silence and introduces them to the whole class as a dumbass and a wuss. Yu proudly demonstrates his dumbass nature by loudly proclaiming that he's not here to make friends and wherever they're taught here is pointless, and that he will be the one who gets the best weapon. Guran smacks him in the head to shut him up and orders him to take a seat. He finds an empty seat but realizes that someone has their legs on top of the chair, so he asks them to put their stinky feet away. After being ignored a couple times, the person lifts the book resting on his head all annoyed, and Yu instantly recognizes him as the guy who punched him. They immediately get into a fist fight, which causes Guran to question Shino's recruiting abilities because she was assigned to both Yu and the other guy named Kimi. Shino calmly admits that Kimi intentionally provoked Yu earlier that day to gauge his ability, and she simply stood back and enjoyed. Once Guran gets tired of all their crap, he roundhouse kicks both of them and resumes class. Later that day, all the trainees gather in an arena where a senior Moon Demon Company member explains that she will be judging everyone's abilities to determine whether they are qualified to attempt the Infernal Arm Aptitude test that will be held next week. The goal of her assessment is to gauge how well they can work in teams, so she instructs them to pair up. Yu turns to Yoichi, but Shino already has dibs on him, leaving Yu to look around until realizing that the only person left unpaired is Kimi. The two Sunday Rays get cuffed together but stand 5 feet apart because they're not gay. After that, the arena's door opens and several cursed army puppets slowly walk out. One of them tries to punch Yoichi and Shino, who quickly scurry away. Yu and Kimi decide to be the first ones to beat a beast, but end up moving in opposite directions, which causes them to be pulled back. They start trash-talking each other until a cursed puppet appears behind them and lands a giant punch on them. Suddenly, the puppets all freeze and the speakers instruct Kimi to rush to the hospital because his sister's condition has rapidly deteriorated. Kimi tells the instructor that he won't be going and that she should resume the training, but Yu argues that he should put his sister first. Kimi tells him to stay out of his business and that he has to become a part of the Moon Demon Company no matter what. He then requests the instructor to continue the training again, but Yu punches him and frantically emphasizes that if his family dies, he will never be able to see them again. Yu's words finally get through to Kimi, and they both go to the hospital where Yu discovers that Kimi's sister is infected with a deadly virus that wiped out most of humanity. The doctor informs him that they fortunately managed to stabilize his sister this time, but she won't survive much longer with conventional medical treatment. Kimi is already aware of this, and he plans to become part of the Moon Demon Company soon so he can transfer her to the army facility where she will have much better chances of being cured. After checking on his sister, Yu and Kimi sit outside the hospital where Yu talks about how he now understands that the reason why Kimi is such a serious grump is because of his sister's condition. Kimi simply whines about how it's Yu's fault for his poor grade this time, so Yu gives him a pep talk by saying that it doesn't matter whether he's graded poorly or doesn't join the Moon Demon Company because he'll just find another way to get what he desires. Kimi begrudgingly admits that Yu is right and apologizes to him for being dragged into his problems and getting poor grades as well. Meanwhile, in another city, a horseman of the apocalypse demon terrorizes civilians until a cloaked vampire appears and kills it. It turns out to be none other than Mika, who didn't die on the day of Yu's escape, but was saved by being forcefully turned into a vampire by drinking the blood of vampire Princess Cruel, who wishes to use him for her own selfish goals. Once the humans are saved, the vampires announce that the city is now under their control and all civilians will be protected as long as they give their blood. A girl who was saved by Mika's intervention comes up to him and offers her blood to him as gratitude. But he rejects her and silently watches everything unfold. Later that day, Mika attends a meeting for the noble vampires where Princess Cruel declares war against the Imperial Demon Army for continually encroaching on vampire territories, killing vampires using magic, and most importantly, experimenting with beings called seraphs. While everyone cheers, Mika thinks to himself that he must rescue Yu before it's too late. Back in the vampire extermination unit, Yu surprise attacks Guran after finally hunting him down after 10 days. Yu inevitably lands on his butt but still barks out his frustrations about not being given an infernal arm yet. Surprisingly, Guran agrees to give him one and even adds that he will send Yu to the front lines after, which is everything Yu has ever wanted to hear. After that chat, Yu runs into Shino, who congratulates him for getting the go-ahead for forming a contract with the demon. Yu gives a lukewarm response because he thinks Guran will flake on him, but Shino asserts that Guran has many flaws, but he always keeps a promise. Later in class, the teacher returns the written tests of the students and reminds them that the grade will determine what rank of infernal arm they will be granted. Yu eagerly glances at his paper and is stunned to see he got 0 marks. Before he can hide it, Shino grabs it and runs around the room while making fun of him. By the time he catches her, she has already sneakily places his test paper on the front desk where the other students gather and discover that he scored 0. Yoichi tries to stick up for him by saying that his Japanese must be weak because he spent most of his life in the underground city with the vampires who speak English and Latin. Still, Kimi roasts him while flexing his perfect score, and it ends with them butting heads as always. At that moment, Guran enters the room to check on the commotion, which prompts Yu to confront him about whether he will still get his infernal arm. Kimby pushes him aside and confronts Guran as well for disappearing for 10 days and insists that they all are ready to form contracts with the demon now. Guran snarkily asks them if they really believe they can face a demon, to which both of them stubbornly agree and start arguing about who's got better chances. While they bicker, Guran asks the teacher what she thinks, to which she answers that Yu and Kimi are definitely stronger than she was when she was their age, but more surprisingly, the one in the class who shows the most resilience against a demon's temptations is Yoichi. Intrigued, Guran decides to do things his own way and unsheaths his sword, saying that if they die, they should only blame themselves for not training hard enough. As soon as he digs the sword into the ground, the room gets engulfed in menacing darkness and everybody starts writhing in pain. One by one, the students drop like flies, but Yu and Kimi manage to stand their ground while Yoichi looks around with concern over why everyone is suddenly fainting. Soon after, Guran withdraws his sword and everything returns to normal, after which he states that everyone who is still conscious has what it takes to be a part of the Infernal Arms contract ceremony if they continue training, and those who are still standing will be given a trial for the Black Demon series, which is the same rank as his current sword. He takes a final look around and decides that those people will be Yu, Kimi, Yoichi, and Shino, the last of whom he seems to be disappointed about but expects no less, because she is from the Lee family of the Imperial Army. The group is being led by Guran to the trial when the teacher expresses her doubts over letting Yoichi try for the Black Demon series because he is not strong enough to accept a demon. Gural plainly says that if he is not strong enough, he will die, but the teacher still persists, leading Guran to give Yoichi the chance to leave if he doesn't want to risk his life. Yu and Kimi both advise him to leave, but after remembering the scene of his sister being killed by a vampire, he decides to stay. After that, Guran leads them to an elevator which takes them deep underground. Yu and Kimi try to ease Yoichi's nerves in their own rough ways, while Shino teases Kimi for needing to use a desk for support during Guran's test. When Yu pitches in with his own roast, Guran warns him not to take this lightly because this demon will be nothing like the demon he faced before. The elevator doors open, beyond which a giant hall lies with Black Demon faces on all sides. Guran explains that the hall contains every single Black Demon series weapon, and that each person needs to select a weapon of their choice and walk into a ritual circle, after which the contract ceremony will immediately begin. If they triumph over the demon, they will acquire its power, and if they fail, they will either be killed by its power or turn into a demon themselves and will instead be killed by Guran. Fueled by his desire to kill the vampires that took Mika away from him, Yu boldly steps forward and unsheathes a katana. Soon after everyone chooses a weapon, their contract ceremony begins. Kimi finds himself in his childhood home where he used to take care of his sick sister. His frail sister is in bed as always and cries out in pain. He rushes to check on her, but she instead says that if she's too much of a burden, he should leave her. He doesn't even let her finish the sentence before refusing and saying that if she dies, they both will die together. Then she claims to have heard him crying at night because of how hard it is to take care of her and because he wants to leave her. Those last words stun Kimi and he wonders if he heard her wrong, but his sister gets up and repeats it in an eerie voice, adding that he cries because he's a greedy human being who only thinks for his own benefit. This makes him realize that he's not back at home but is in a hallucination created by the demon. However, the demon points out that this is a memory with his true feelings mixed in. Kimi gets pissed off and yells at the demon to shut the hell up. Meanwhile, he finds himself in the orphanage, but it's completely empty. Suddenly, Mika appears behind him, wearing the clothes they were forced to wear in the underground vampire prison. He bluntly accuses Yu of running away and abandoning his family when they needed him the most, but this doesn't affect Yu in the slightest, who firmly tells the demon that it should stop playing mind games because he already knows all the tricks. Demon Mika smiles and a black cloud starts pouring out of his mouth and solidifies into black spikes that pierce into Yu's body to hold him in place. Mika drops on the floor, on which a black demon with red eyes rises and says that it now realizes that Yu did not fall for its hallucination because he's already experienced a demon before, but that demon was much weaker, and that it is much more capable of breaking his mind. Yu tells it to shut up and give its power to him already. The demon assesses him for some time and asks if he wants its power to enact revenge for the family he thought he'd never have. When Yu confirms this, the demon says that it is willing to lend its full power to him if it's for such a purpose. This surprises Yu, who didn't think it'd be so easy, but then suddenly, a voice from behind says that this is not enough. Yu gets a bad feeling and looks behind to see the dead bodies of all his friends. One of the girls opens her eyes and says that the demon won't give its power unless he completely devotes himself to revenge. The demon agrees and says that it won't give its power after all, and disappears. In its place, Mika appears and playfully asks Yu if he will leave them again, which is followed by another friend who asks the same thing. The other kids chime in and cheerfully say that Yu would never do that, as if to mock him. Mika then tells him that he's being unfair by making new friends like Yoichi and Kimi because it means he's leaving them behind and will eventually forget about them. Yu denies this, so Mika tells him to prove it by giving up those new friends since the orphans are the only family he needs. They all start chanting as if they're in a trance that Yu should give his all to revenge. Yu fights back and with all his might shouts at them to shut up and give him the demon's powers because he will use it to protect all those who are precious to him. This finally breaks the shackles holding him and he finds himself transported in a vast emptiness, where the demon materializes in front of him and agrees to give its power because it likes him. Before Yu gets too excited, it warns him that it will possess him the moment his heart seems to waver and he loses his conviction. After he accepts those conditions, the demon introduces herself as Azura and tells him to call upon her name if it needs her power. Finally, she decides to reveal to Yu that he's not fully human, and that at least 10% of him is something else, which might mean that humans are experimenting on him. Yu is totally confused by this, so Azura advises him not to trust any humans because they're worse than demons or vampires. Yu asks her what she's talking about, but she doesn't explain any further and forms the contract between them. Yu opens his eyes to find himself back in the contract ceremony hall, where Guran congratulates him for passing the test. It turns out Kimi already completed his contract ceremony and earned his infernal arm. Yu then asks what happened to Yoichi, hearing which everyone silently looks to the side. Yu follows their gaze and sees Yoichi still in a deep slumber. Yoichi's hallucination brings him to his childhood room as his child self, where his sister is hugging him tight while footsteps can be heard coming up the stairs to the room. She drags him under the bed and tells him to be quiet and not get out of there no matter what happens. He tries to protest, but she gets up and within the next second, a vampire walks into the room, lifts her up and kills her. After he's done drinking her blood, he drops her carelessly and leaves. A terrified Yoichi stares at his sister's lifeless body, but she suddenly opens her eyes and tells Yoichi that they are currently reliving his innermost memory. After asking if she is alive, she drags him out and coldly tells him that she's obviously dead. When she lets him go, he turns back to his present self and asks who she actually is. She replies that she is the demon he summoned to form a contract with to avenge his sister, but after looking into his heart, she could not find even a trace of a desire for revenge and only sensed emotions the demon hates like love and compassion. Yoichi protests, saying that he wants to avenge his sister, but she claims that he's lying and that he's relieved his sister died instead of him. She then adds that he only wants peace for his loved ones without causing bloodshed, and that no revenge can be accomplished with that sort of thing. She says that she hates people like this, and so he should let her enact revenge in his stead. In an instant, she plunges her hand into his chest, and they stare at each other awkwardly until the demon says that he didn't even try to fight back, and that such a person doesn't deserve to be her master. In the ceremony hall, a rumbling sound suddenly shakes the room and Yoichi gets up and teleports above them. Guran recognizes that Yoichi failed the test and has now become possessed by the demon, so he orders Yu and Kimi to deal with this problem as their first assignment. The possessed Yoichi summons a bow and starts shooting arrows at them. While Yu dodges them, he asks Guran how he expects them to fight against a comrade. Guran doesn't really get his point because he doesn't consider Yoichi a person anymore, so he tells them to kill the demon and end Yoichi's misery. When Yu protests again, Guran gets pissed off and tells him not to take the Moon Demon Company as a joke, and that he needs to do what is necessary as a solider because Yoichi won't come back anyway. Conflicted, both Kimi and Yu draw their infernal arms and exchange a knowing glance between them. Kimi launches himself at the demon while deflecting the approaching arrows with his dual swords. He swings at the demon, but it blocks it with his bow and kicks him down. At the same time, Yu attacks from behind, which catches the demon by surprise, allowing Yu to disarm it. Yu smirks after that, but Guran yells out that he shouldn't let his guard down because the demon is in Yoichi and not the weapon. Kimmy shoots upward to attack again, but Yu asks if Kimmy intends to kill Yoichi, which causes a moment of hesitation in him and he drops down. The demon mocks them for not being able to kill Yoichi, but Yu ignores its taunts and yells at Yoichi to snap out of it and not let the demon beat him. His words fall on deaf ears and the demon summons another weapon. As they go for round 2, Shino has finally had enough and urges Guran not to make them kill Yoichi, and that he has gone too far. Guran acts surprised that Shino has lost her usual cool attitude and wonders if she's grown to like these guys. He then tells her to finish the job if she cares that much. Yu makes a last-ditch effort to bring Yoichi back, but the demon draws another arrow and starts laughing. Still, Yu surrenders because he can't kill his friend and adds that even Yoichi, who lost his family like him, can also never kill a friend. Finally, he throws his sword aside, shocking Kimmy and Shino into action. The demon continues to aim the arrow and is about to shoot, but Guran, too, shouts at Yoichi to not hide under the bed like he did with his sister and actually make a stand and protect his friend. Yoichi's body freezes and the memory of his sister's sacrifice returns to him, but this time he reaches his hand out of the bed with the motivation to be strong enough to help his loved ones. He yells out to the demon to give him its power to destroy his enemies, and this time it works and Yoichi regains control of himself. Immediately, he starts crying like a little b*** and hugs Yu, comforts him. Guran kicks Yu in the gut for taking so long, which confuses the hell out of Yu. Shino asks if this is what he was expecting this entire time, but he plays aloof and insists that he wouldn't care if a kid died. He then walks up to Yoichi and tells him that he must have realized from this that revenge is not what should drive him, but instead, the desire to protect his important friends is a better purpose to live. He gives the same lesson to Yu, saying that he should leave his previous family and accept this unit as his family and put his line for them instead. After that, he returns to his lighthearted self and rewards them for getting an infernal arm and working as a team by sending them to the front lines. He explains that vampires have been highly active in the Kansai region and are planning to reclaim it, so they will all go to investigate the area. That night, Yu gets a dream about Mika, who tells him that he will continue to haunt his dreams until he can find the answer for why he abandoned him. He then transforms into Azura, who tempts him to give her his soul when it will break by promising to enact revenge for him. At that moment, the alarm rings and thankfully wakes him up from that boring dream. The first thing he does is play with his sword, which he kept next to him on the bed. He wears his Imperial Army uniform for the first time in a long time and leaves for duty, while thinking about how he will bring justice to Mika. He arrives at the rundown subway station, where Shino is already waiting for him. Together, they get on the train when Yu asks him why she's here. She answers that she's here to give him orders about the Shinjuku assignment. He asks whether he will get to kill vampires once they get there, but she discourages him from thinking of bloodshed so early in the morning. She explains that it is more important for them to strengthen their defense, which bores the hell out of Yu, and he decides to ignore her. Once they reach Shinjuku, Shino states their titles as Moon Demon Company members to the guards there, who scoff at them in disbelief because they look like little kids. Yu makes fun of Shino for looking like a loli, to which she responds that she still has a lot of room to grow because her sister was tall and beautiful. Yu is surprised to hear that she has a sister for the first time, but she clarifies that she is dead like every other sister in this show. Seeing that Yu feels bad for her, she says that it is normal to have lost a loved one, considering they live in such a tragic world. Once the gates to Shinjuku open, they hear some girl loudly complaining to Guran about being teamed up with a bunch of noobs. After joining Kimmy and Yoichi, they hear her ranting about how she's been in the vampire extermination unit since she was 13, and it is embarrassing for her to be put on the same level as lowlives, and not only that, but also having the team leader position going to Shino, who she seems to have a special hatred for because she's insecure that Shino is a cuter loli than her. After noticing they're all here, Guran informs them that the girl named Mitsuba will be joining them, to which Shino coolly accepts, unlike Mitsuba, who looks like she's going to be possessed by a demon. Very soon, the two end up drawing their infernal arms at each other, forcing Guran to interfere and threaten them with solitary confinement if they don't behave. Once things calm down, Guran formally introduces Mitsuba to the group and emphasizes that once they leave, they have to work as a team and nobody is allowed to fly solo, because a team of at least 5 is essential to surviving attacks from armed vampires. Yu does his usual routine of acting like a lone wolf when Mitsuba throws him a surprise kick, which he manages to block with his hand. His quick reflexes impress her, and she agrees to teach him even though Guran points out how he never asked him to teach anyone. For their first mission, the team has to go to a nearby district where a group of people are being kept as hostages by vampires who are using them as personal blood bags. After freeing them, they will go to Shinjuku. While walking to their destination, Yoichi marvels at the ruined city because it is the first time he's seen the true outside beyond the Imperial Army protected zone. He asks Yu what it was like to be a guard patrolling the outside of the barriers, but before he can answer, Mitsuga butts in with her flat ass and says that whatever horsemen he faced close to the barrier are like little flies and the ones they will face here are a whole other league, and so they must always stay in formation and keep constant watch unless they want to die. They reach the station where they expect to find the settlement, but there seems to be no sign of human life until a little girl starts screaming and runs toward them. Behind her, a spider-like horseman is chasing her. She screams for help and tries to change direction by skipping a barricade, but the monster follows her and sends it flying toward her, causing her to fall. Yu immediately tries to step in, but Mitsuga orders him to stop, saying that it's a trap by the vampires who are counting on them to interfere. However, Yu cannot bear to stand by and watch a child die, so he runs off to save her anyway. Mitsuga runs behind him, but Shino stops Kimi and Yoichi, saying that she detects vampires coming for them. Meanwhile, Yu catches up to the horseman when it has cornered the girl at a cliff edge and is about to devour her. He stops its tentacles from attacking her and tells her to run away. Once she gets away, Mitsuga arrives and chops one of the monster's arms with her sickle-shaped infernal arm. Immediately after hitting it, they see a group of vampires coming for them. Mitsuga explains that the vampires use random people as bait to both lure monsters out and to catch humans who will help them, so that they can deal with such human threats. The three vampires surround Yu and attack him all at once. He manages to dodge most of their swings, but when one of them slashes a shallow cut on his face, he summons Azura to lend her power, causing a black cloud to push the vampires away and marks starting to form on his skin. The horseman attacks while he is not paying attention, but Kimi luckily shows up on time and makes a deep wound on the monster, followed by an arrow shot by Yoichi, which takes down its remaining arm. Finally, Mitsuga lands the killing blow on its head. The vampires who see this go down realize that they are from the Vampire Extermination Unit and decide to call for backup, but Yu interferes by swinging his sword, which sends a shockwave that knocks them back. Mitsuga tells him to stop before he can continue, saying that they need to retreat. One of the vampires ends up calling them pathetic livestock, which triggers Yu. One of the other vampires realizes that Yu looks like trouble and tells the previous one to chill. Similarly, Shino supports Mitsuga's decision and convinces Yu to retreat because they are in enemy territory. Once they get away, Mitsuga slaps Yu for his recklessness, which put the whole squad in danger. Yu explains that he could not let an innocent person die but accepts his mistake and apologizes. At that moment, the little girl they save returns Yu's jacket and thanks him, but he simply says that it is their duty to protect her. Despite Mitsuga just yelling at Yu for saving her, the two-faced Hu goes toward the girl and sweetly tells her that the Imperial Army will always look out for her. After she leaves, Shino tells Yu to go easy on Mitsuga because she has a dark past, which she refuses to elaborate further on because it's a secret. The squad brings the little girl to their place where they ask her for info on where the vampires' hideout with human hostages is. She stays silent for some time, which prompts Yu to say that she doesn't have to say anything if she isn't comfortable, and that it's enough for them if she just lives life with a smile. Mitsuga gets annoyed by his corny ass and storms off. Eventually, the girl answers that vampires are using the Sando Station as a hideout to raise humans. The next day, on the way to Sando Station, Kimi asks what they will do about the captured civilians there, to which Mitsuga responds that they shouldn't care about them right now and their priority is to kick vampire butt. Shino adds that if the vampires turn out to be awake and armed, they will have to retreat again. Once they start descending the stairs to the station, Shino briefs them about their strategy. She reminds them that according to the girl's info, they should expect 7 vampires, but they are most likely sleeping, so they can rush in with full force and hope to catch them by surprise. As soon as they enter, they find a bunch of sad and exhausted kids wearing the same white uniform Yu had to wear in the underground city. Mitsuga is the first to turn her back to them and head to the floor that the vampires are supposed to be. Kimi wonders why the dummies don't just run away when the vampires aren't looking, but Shino and Mitsuga point out that the outside is filled with monsters and they get protection from vampires in exchange for giving their blood. Once they reach the floor, it doesn't take long for a cloaked vampire to show up and the squad immediately draws their weapon upon Mitsuga's command. However, before Mitsuga can give further orders, Yu springs into action and stabs the vampire squarely in the chest, which instantly vaporizes him. Mitsuga can't stand the audacity and goes to beat him up, but he grabs her hand and sternly tells her to stop complaining so much because he didn't act on his own and simply attacked after Mitsuga's orders to draw and making sure that the enemy was unarmed. He then pulls her toward him, which causes her to blush, but it turns out he was trying to get her away from another vampire who appeared at the scene. He locks swords with the vampire at just the right moment and kicks him back, after which he excitedly yells that he's been waiting for this moment for 4 years. Then charge at each other, and Yu makes a sweeping swing which slashes through the vampire and vaporizes him too. Mitsuga stares in shock at his display of great strength, while jealous Kimi tries to argue that he's still stronger than Yu. As Mitsuga glares at them in bewilderment, Shino points out that Guran probably made this squad with the hope that Mitsuga could teach Yu and Kimi a thing or two about teamwork. Mitsuga takes a deep breath and scolds them to get their shit together so they can hunt down the remaining 5 vampires. After wandering around for some time, they are confronted by all the vampires at once. They are about to throw hands when Mitsuga notices one of the vampires smirk at her, causing her to realize something is off, but before she can do anything, the glass behind them shatters and 3 more vampires come pouring in, one of whom grabs Mitsuga by the throat. She asks how there can be 8 of them when they were told there were only 5 at the site, to which the vampire strangling her playfully asks who she heard this info from. Mitsuga thinks back to the moment the kid told them the info and remembers the tears falling down her face, making her realize that the vampires made her lie for them. The vampire laughs at how easily humans can turn on their own whole kind just to save the loved one. Mitsuga tells the others to leave her behind and run, but obviously, he doesn't listen and starts fighting the vampire. As he locks blades with one of them, the other uses the opening to attack from the side, but Yoichi stops him by shooting an arrow at his hand. Mitsuga helplessly watches as her squad members engage in battle with the vampires. When Yu gets wounded in his leg, she gets a flashback of the moment one of her previous comrades died at the hands of a monster in order to save her and starts crying while begging them to stop. Yu, however, is a total Chad and single-handedly takes down one vampire after another until he reaches Mitsuga and strikes the vampire holding her. The next thing she knows, Yu is carrying her away to safety. The squad then reorganizes into a circle with their backs against each other to face the vampires together. Once Mitsuga gives the order to exterminate, the squad beats the odds and kicks vampire butt. After that, they call for reinforcements from the Imperial Army to liberate the hostage kids. Eventually, the little girl from earlier arrives at the scene and apologizes to Yu with tears in her eyes. He gently holds her by the shoulder and tells her she doesn't need to apologize for anything because she did the right thing by trying to protect her friends. After he bids farewell to the girl who reunites with her friends, he is approached by Mitsuga, who asks him if what Shino said is true about him leaving his family behind in the vampire underground city. He sharply tells her to stay out of his life and begins to walk away, but she tells him to stop and clarifies that she doesn't think he was in the wrong. Yu replies that he doesn't really care if he was right or wrong because he still left them behind in order to save his own life. Mitsuga then turns red out of embarrassment by trying to ask him something about how he saved her earlier, but ultimately fails to say the words and storms off in frustration while stating that she still hates him. The next day, Yu thirsts over Kimi's impressive ability to hotwire a car because he hasn't seen a car since he was taken to the underground city. Once the engine starts, he loses his mind and begs Kimi to let him drive even though he doesn't know how to drive. Kimi tells him that he'll give him a short lesson later, which impresses Yu even more. Kimi, who is not used to Yu being nice to him, tells him to cut it out. The second that Kimi takes his attention away from Yu to inform the others about the car, a loud crash is heard, and they see Yu drive the car into a streetlight until it topples over. As if that's not enough, he reverses the car in full speed and almost runs Kimi over, but still has the nerve to say that he will drive them to Shinjuku. Finally, Kimi takes the wheel, and so they begin their journey toward the hotspot Shinjuku. On the way, Yu hears the sound of horsemen of the apocalypse monsters and asks if they should go and investigate, but Kimi argues that if they stop to fight now, they'll just endlessly keep fighting. However, Mitsuga soon realizes that the sounds are coming from Shinjuku, so Shino orders everyone to stay on high alert. Once they arrive at Shinjuku, they are alarmed to see the entire city covered in an envelope of smoke. They spot a vampire coming toward them, so Kimi prepares to hit the brakes, but Yu recognizes the vampire to be a noble and tells him not to stop. The squad bursts out of the accelerating car, but the vampire stops it with his bare hands and casually throws the wreckage at them. Yoichi shoots a volley of arrows at the target, but he diverts them all with a single swing of his sword. He then sends a violent gust of wind that Shino just barely manages to deflect with her scythe. Shino orders the others to be careful because this vampire has a Class 1 weapon, but before she knows it, he is already behind her and launching an attack. However, Yu somehow gets there in time and disarms the enemy. The vampire smirks while stepping back and admits that Yu is pretty good for a human. At that moment, 2 other vampires arrive and Yu asks if they should retreat. Shino replies that she doubts the vampires will let them and that they need to fight until they are at the brink of demon possession. Luckily, the new vampires inform the noble that Lord Ferret has been waiting for him at the front lines. Hearing this, he decides to let the squad go this one time but promises to take their blood the next time they meet. Yu jumps at the chance to argue, but he is humbled real quick when the noble appears behind him before he can even see him disappear. After the vampires retreat, Shino collapses to the ground with relief that they survived, but Yu is pissed about being treated like a plaything even after having an infernal arm. Shino explains that since he has a weapon from the Black Demon series, he can probably get on equal footing with such vampires by learning some curses, but all that doesn't matter because she and the others will still die since they're weaker than him. She emphasizes that this is the reason why they need teamwork, and that this encounter was a good lesson for them. She says that the silver lining is that at least nobody died, and for the first time ever, Yu suggested a retreat. She thanks him for saving her life and agrees with Guran's statement that Yu cares about his friends. All that praise causes Yu to get shy, and he finally quits yapping. By the time the squad arrives to Shinjuku, the Imperial Army's reclaimed territory is invaded by vampires who manage to get a hold of some airplanes and recreate 9/11. Once the barrier is destroyed, more planes and helicopters flood in and wreak havoc, with one firing a missile straight at Yu and the others. After they run for cover, Yoichi notices many marksmen shooting exploding arrows at the choppers and asks if they have the same infernal arm as him. Mitsuga explains that they are more like a weaker version of his, and such weapons are called runic arms. Yu gets mad that he isn't the one yapping for once and snaps them to attention as a helicopter barrels toward them and shoots a round of bullets. They all manage to escape, but vampires come pouring down from the chopper to fight on foot. The squad, along with the other soldiers, engage in a rough battle with the bloodsuckers, but they are at great disadvantage because of the annoying helicopter that keeps making aerial attacks. Yoichi tries to shoot it down, but a vampire comes after him, only to be stopped by Shino. Once his field is clear, Yoichi shoots an arrow and brings down the chopper. Yu and Kimmy make an iconic duo as they chop down many vampires together, and soon all the vampires in that area have been eliminated. After that, they are greeted by Corporal Nagai of the Shinjuku security unit, who is super relieved to see the Moon Demon Company here to help. He briefs them about the bleak situation at the West End barrier, which has been infiltrated by the vampires. He guesses that the counterattack squad won't last much longer, and that the Moon Demon Company folks are their best chance at keeping the situation under control. Hearing this, the squad agrees to be escorted to the West End by Nagai. Meanwhile, Mika silently watches the bloodshed at the front lines with a cheerful Lord Farid at his side. Farid tries to mess with him by saying that being here must bring back memories of his life with Yu at the orphanage, and that if he's lucky, he will meet Yu on the battlefield very soon. Mika still pleads the fifth and watches the other vampires drink blood of the fallen soldiers with disgust. Farid notices and suggests he quenches thirst in the middle of the battle too, because once they return to the underground city, it is forbidden to drink blood directly from humans. Mika finally breaks his silence to call out Farid's bullshit by pointing out how he drank his blood multiple times. Farid replies that Mika is the one who was hoeing himself out in the hopes of getting the gun and the map from his place. Mika fully regrets that stupid plan because Farid knew all along and it ended up getting his family killed. He decides he's had enough of Farid and starts to leave, but Farid warns him about the dangers of not drinking blood for too long. This takes Mika back to a memory 4 years ago of Princess Cruel convincing him to drink the blood of a human in order to halt the process of aging and becoming an immortal vampire. However, Mika refused because he'd rather die than become a monster like her. When it was clear he wouldn't budge, the princess revealed that if he didn't drink blood, he would turn into a mindless demon. He refused even after that, so she slashed her arm and offered her own blood for him to drink, the sight of which made Mika's heart race. In the end, he threw away the blood-filled glass, but as she walked away in frustration, he saw some blood drops fall from her arm and he could no longer overcome his temptation. He grabbed her arm and started drinking her blood, which is just what she wanted because she could then use him as her dog forever. In the present, Mika takes out a vial that contains 10 days worth of cruel blood and drinks it all, thinking to himself that he has 10 days to find Yu. Meanwhile, Yu and the squad are being taken to the West End barrier, Shinjuku. Just before they're about to reach, Shino tells the new guys that they will have to take their first training lesson now. You think she's lost her mind because they are minutes away from walking into a battlefield. But Shino and Mitsuga elaborate that from the earlier incident with the nobles, it must be obvious that they stand no chance in a real war despite having Black Demon's series of infernal arms. Shino then takes out her drug stash and explains that these pills are performance enhancers that increase the synchrony between the consumer and their demon. According to her, with just one pill, a person can be 1.5 times stronger. You can't wait to become a crack addict and decides to take 10 at once, but Shino is a buzzkill who warns that the pills come with adverse side effects and that taking just 3 will result in his insides spilling out. Even taking 2 pills causes severe trauma to the body and may end in death due to shock, which is why users usually take the 1. Mitsuga adds that the effects only last for 15 minutes, after which the person is left in a vulnerable position. After hearing those comforting words, she hands each of them a stash of their own. He questions why she didn't give these pills earlier when they encountered the nobles, to which she says that they would have died anyway because it takes 10 seconds for the pills to kick in, which would have been enough time for the noble to kill them all. Soon after, their truck gets toppled over after bullets fired from a helicopter burst the tires. After Yu finds his footing, he notices that Corporal Nagai is still inside the truck unconscious, so he tries to drag him out. Shino sees that the chopper is coming back for seconds, so she runs to help him, but Nagai won't budge. The chopper shoots non-stop as it inches closer and closer, but Kimi and Mitsuga jump in at the last second and block the bullets with their weapons. Yoichi shoots an arrow at the helicopter, but it swerves away and launches a couple of missiles until he hits it with another arrow. Yu and Shino manage to pull the corporal out right before one of the missiles hits the truck, and they all run for cover. Once the rubble settles, Yu and Shino find themselves in a subway tunnel with Corporal Nagai still in dreamland and the others nowhere to be found. Luckily, Kimi can be heard shouting for them from the other side of a boulder pile. Yu asks if they have a way out, to which Kimi replies affirmatively, so Shino instructs them to meet at the defense line. Yu and Shino take the corporal to a temporary base for medical attention, where they find out he will live to see another day. There, they find out that Guran is at the front lines of West Shinjuku fighting the commander Lord Farid and his troops, and has issued an order to their squad to report as backup immediately. This is a pivotal fight because whichever side wins will win the rest of the war. They think about how to regroup with the others when Yu hears an argument break out between soldiers because one of them is too scared to go fight the vampires again and so refuses to take his troops to an active war zone where there are only 3 vampire extermination unit members, who he considers as just young kids. This sounds awfully familiar to Yu, and he asks whether the 3 members he was talking about were 2 guys and a loli. When the soldier confirms, he asks where they are fighting, to which the soldier names the Shinjuku Central Park. Hearing this, Yu tells the soldier that they will take care of this, and that he should take his troops to the defense line. As he marches away, Shino follows and tells him he's acting like a dumbass because they don't know for sure whether those people are Kimi, Mitsuga, and Yoichi, and that they should prioritize Guran's orders for backup as he will need all the help he can get to face the main enemy force. Of course, Yu does what he does best, which is ignoring her and continuing forward. As the 2 run to the park, Yu thanks Shino for accompanying him, to which she tells him not to state the obvious because they are family. Once they reach, they see the other 3 take on a group of vampires that massively outnumbers them. Eventually, they get surrounded by the vampires, and despite putting up a good fight, Kimi is about to be unalived by a vampire who attacks from behind, but thankfully Yu appears at the right moment and blocks his sword. He and Shino steal the show by instantly wiping the floor with the vampires. Once all the enemies are defeated, Kimi asks why they have come because it was decided for them to meet at the defense line. Yu finds it difficult to make eye contact with him, so Kimi assures him that they won't die so easily and that he should have some faith on them. Yu apologizes at first, but then blurts out that if the same thing were to happen another time, he would show up again. Kimi is about to beat him up for not listening to him, but then Yu explains that it's not that he doesn't trust them, but because he wants to be there for him always. At that moment, the rain finally stops and the sun shines over them, which fills them with renewed energy to fight together. Meanwhile, in the front lines, Guran brings the best of the best from the Moon Demon Company to face the commander Lord Farid and his minions. Farid orders his boys to separate the other humans from Guran, so that he and Mika can deal with him alone. However, Mika tells Farid that he can take care of Guran himself and draws his sword. Their swords crash again and again as they do ultimate parkour. Once on the ground, Guran sheaths his sword and zips toward Mika to stick a talisman on his forehead that detonates on his command. Mika comes out of that unscathed and looks down on Guran for using such old magic to try to beat a vampire. Farid, who is watching from above, marvels at Mika's strength, but warns him that his arrogance will get him into trouble. At that moment, Mika realizes he is surrounded by razor-thin wires which were secretly laid by a Moon Demon Company member while Guran was distracting him. The lady tugs at them, but Mika gets away but doesn't realize Guran is right behind him. Guran makes what would have been a killing blow, but Farid steps in to shield Mika and shoves Guran aside. Guran realizes that these vampires are incredibly strong and he needs to take a second pill to stand a chance. His comrades try to stop him out of fear that he will die, but he points out that he will die for sure if he doesn't take it. He then asks Mika to give him 20 seconds for the meds to kick in, but Mika turns into the Flash and appears right in front of him and makes him fall on his butt, making Guran realize that he was holding back before. Farid then notices that backup is fast approaching, so Mika decides to end this stupid show and stabs Guran. The backup turns out to be our fake squad, and Yu watches Guran right in front of his eyes because he can't get there fast enough. Furious, he yells out loud and charges at the attacker, who turns back and realizes that it's Yu. At the same time, Yu comes running and drives his sword through a vulnerable Mika. But once he does, he too recognizes his old best friend. They both stare at each other in total shock when Guran yells at Yu to quickly activate his demon curse and kill Mika. When Yu fails to comply, Guran picks up his sword from the ground to do it himself, but Mika leaps away. Guran then punches Mika for magically fumbling the bag and demands to know why he didn't kill the vampire, but Yu is unable to speak. Right then, Guran starts coughing up blood but pushes Yu away when he tries to check on him. The rest of the squad also catches up and asks why he didn't activate his curse. Finally, Yu reveals that the vampire is Mika, who is his family. He slowly approaches Mika while crying and asking if it's really him, and Mika does the same. Farid obnoxiously third wheels them and asks what Mika is planning to do since Yu has probably been manipulated by the humans around him. Mika responds that he will save Yu, but Farid points out the obvious fact that Yu is a human and their kinds can't coexist. He then cheerfully suggests that he Yu into a vampire, but Mika grabs him by the throat and threatens to kill him if he lays a hand on Yu. Farid laughs it off as a joke and instead offers to help take care of the humans so Mika can save his precious Yu. Mika looks back at Yu surrounded by his squad and realizes that Yu thinks he had made friends, not knowing that they are actually using him. At that moment, the noble vampire from earlier named Crowley and his sidekicks arrive and asks Farid what he plans to do. Farid lands on capturing the vampire extermination unit to make them livestock. Seeing so many nobles, Guran knows they have no chance and orders all troops to retreat to the second defense line. Yu protests because he doesn't know what to do about his last family member Mika, but Yoichi and Shino convince him now is not the time to think about it, and they start making a run for it. Farid zeroes in on Yu, saying that escaping is not allowed. Yu rapidly draws his sword, but Farid is even quicker and appears behind him. Yu starts wildly swinging his sword as if in a frenzy, while shouting that he is the reason why his family was wiped out. Farid casually practices his backflips to evade Yu's attacks and admits that Yu is fast but lacks experience. Guran tries to ambush him from the side, but Farid vanishes and reappears behind him to roundhouse kick him, which is enough to put the already injured Guran out of commission. Farid follows it with a punch to the gut, and dumbass Yu gives away a surprise attack by yelling beforehand, so Farid disappears when Yu is about to stab him and comes behind him to suck his blood. Suddenly, his arm gets chopped off, and it turns out to be done by none other than Mika. Mika approaches Yu and urges him to leave everything and run away with him. Yu doesn't have a clue what he's talking about and questions why he's with Farid. Mika doesn't give an answer, but instead picks him up and leaves. Yu again and again tries to ask Mika what he's up to. He only gives vague answers like Yu needs to get away because the humans are deceiving him. Annoyed, Yu forces himself out of Mika's arms, and once they face each other, he asks if that means Mika is no longer human, and if it's his fault because he ran away. Mika denies this and insists that all that matters is they stick together. However, Yu refuses because he can't leave his friends behind. At that moment, Yu hears Shinoa's screams and turns back to see her being strangled by Crowley. He goes to help her, but Mika stops him and pleads with him not to look back because there's nothing for him there. Kimi, who tries to save her, also gets pinned down, and one by one, all of them get captured by the noble vampires. Yu attempts to get to them again, but Mika grabs him tight and begs him to understand, but obviously he doesn't understand the point of letting vampires drink his friend's blood, so he uses all his might to flip Mika down. However, it's too late, and all of them end up having your blood drank, causing you to scream in agony. Mika checks to see if he's okay, but he is in fact not okay, and one of his eyes turns red and starts bleeding. He suddenly finds himself in a heavenly place with Azura, who tells him that Mika is actually right and that he should get away from the humans, because once it gets too late, he will lose his humanity. At that moment, the skies above them split open and trumpets signal the arrival of angel-like creatures. Azura realizes that this marks the time when the monster inside Yu will be released. Back in the real world, Yu continues screaming as a dark force bursts out of his body like a zombie fungus. Mika realizes that this confirms that the humans were indeed experimenting on him, and he desperately asks Yu to calm down and come with him. However, Yu seems to have gone mad and starts slowly walking toward the nobles. First, he targets Crowley, and with one swing of his arm, he destroys all the buildings in front of him, but Crowley manages to get away. He then locks blades with him, which sends Crowley flying into a building and coming out the other end. Yu follows and swings his sword a couple times until he kicks Crowley in the gut and strikes the ground. which causes the earth between them to rise up into a suspiciously shaped tower that destroys the surrounding area and leaves behind a giant crater. After seeing all this destruction, Farid asks Guran what exactly he has created, but Guran feigns ignorance. Farid accuses him of conducting human experimentation out of greed, but points out how such things always end up going out of control and backfiring for humans. Meanwhile, evil zombie Yu inches toward a terrified Shino, while muttering that he must eliminate all sinners. Guran yells at Shino to do something to get Yu back, so she activates her infernal arm, only to be disarmed immediately. Yu almost stabs her, but Mika jumps in and gets stabbed himself, while telling Yu that he must not kill humans. Shino asks why he saved her, but Mika gives mixed signals by telling her to shut her dirty human mouth up. Mika then realizes that his wounds are not healing, and Yu pushes the blade even deeper. In a last-ditch attempt, Shino hugs Yu tight and begs him to stop. Yu starts screaming again and lets go of Mika to stab her instead, but slowly the dark force around him disappears. Finally, his eyes turn back to normal and he collapses. As Shino holds him with concern, Mika curses the humans for doing this to him. Guran proudly states that this spectacle was his trump card, but Farid counters that it achieved nothing. Guran smirks and says that it made all the difference, which prompts Farid to become cautious, and he notices the sniper in the distance. This allows him to very narrowly escape from death, but by that time, all the nobles are surrounded by hundreds of Imperial army troops. Finally, a man walks up to Guran and commends him for his job and tells him to leave the rest to the Hyraji family. While the vampires are taken care of by the army, Shino eyes Guran suspiciously and tells him that she'd like to ask him some questions later, but he flat out refuses to entertain anything from her and leaves. A few days later, Shino takes matters into her own hands and tries to enter a restricted dungeon. When she is stopped by the guards, she asks them what this place is for. The first guard refuses to answer, but the other argues that this place is an open secret to the troops at Shinjuku, and so there is no harm in telling her. He explains that these dungeons are used to probe vampires for weaknesses. Shino seems to have expected something like this, so Ash asks to be let inside. When they turn her down again, she shows the Hyraji crest, which immediately brings them in line. After they open the gate for her, they ask her why she has remained a mere sergeant despite being a part of the Hyraji family that controls the Imperial army. She replies that it's because she has no interest in the power struggles of the army, which ultimately killed her sister. Upon entering, she walks past a few good old dungeons until she finds a door of interest, which upon walking through leads her to a giant sophisticated lab in which dozens of scientists are running unknown experiments. She enters the main control room where she finds Guran and corners him for an interrogation. He tries to make her go away, but she confronts him about the special pills he made her give Yu. At the time, he claimed that Yu needed special drugs because he had a unique infernal arm, but she now suspects the drugs caused him to turn into that monster. Guran flat out admits to human experimentation and calls her out for either being or pretending to be naive, because she should know that humanity's existence is on thin ice from the constant threat of vampires and horsemen of the apocalypse, and experiments like her sister's life work on creating the infernal arms are necessary to ensure their survival, even if it claims some lives. Guran then accuses her of only caring so much because she has a crush on Yu and tells her childish ass to get out. As she leaves, Guran reveals that the effects of the drugs will last for 5 more days and that he will wake up after that. Days pass and Yu finally wakes up and finds Yoichi sleeping on a chair by his side. Sensing the change, Yoichi wakes up immediately and is thrilled to see Yu regain consciousness. He runs to get everyone else, but Yu is super confused and asks what even happened. Yoichi answers that he was in a coma for 7 days, but everyone else is safe, which gives Yu great relief. He then realizes that Mika still being alive was not a dream and starts crying. Shino, who walks in at that moment, comforts him and assures him that it's a natural cry because he reunited with his family member after a long time. Yu wipes his tears and asks what happened after he fell unconscious, to which she explains that reinforcements came flooding in, but they only managed to capture the common vampires and very few nobles, with most of them escaping. He asks what happened to Mika, and upon seeing Shino's hesitation, requests her to tell him the truth because all he wants to know is if he's alive. Hearing this, she reveals that he was taken by the vampires. Yu thanks her and then suddenly grabs her neck and asks how she got that injury. She starts blushing and stutters out that a vampire bit her. At that moment, Mitsuga barges into the room and witnesses the sus scene, which causes her to get jealous and push Shino away. After they clarify the situation, Yu realizes that even Mitsuga has the same wound. Finally, Yoichi brings Kimi, who tries to act casual while welcoming him back, but Shino is quick to expose him for constantly checking on Yu while he was in the coma. Seeing them all together, Yu gives a heartfelt thank you to the squad for being his friends. They tell him to quit his sappiness and let him rest for the night, assuring him that they are all on break until he makes a full recovery. Once alone, he thinks to himself how lucky he is that not only all his friends but also Mika survived. On the other side, Mika is thinking the same thing about Yu, and they both swear to save the other someday without knowing the true nature of the grand plan that is in motion. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and watch the video on your screen next.